data, and then I'll talk about the challenges in coding, aligning, cleaning, and analyzing all these different kinds of data. At the end, I'll talk about how the researchers can make inferences about these data, and then the questions that that can drive future research. The data that I will be talking about will be related to this system, Metatutor, that we are using in the lab. It's basically a hypermedia learning environment that uses text and diagrams to teach students about the human circular system. There are 4 agents. One is up there, and then 3 in the bottom. The 3 in the bottom, on the bottom are 3 different. We've assigned them different roles to be responsible for each one of the pillars of the SRL, like monitoring, planning, monitoring, and learning strategies. And during the session, students set goals, and then there are 3 sub-goals, and then they use either learning strategies, planning, monitoring, like reading, note-taking, feeling of knowing, judgmental learning, or note-taking. Then, first I'll talk about how think aloud protocols. Eric last session talked about think aloud protocols in detail, so I'll just go through this part more quickly. The advantages are that think aloud protocols taps into cognitive, affective, and motivational and metacognitive processes that goes on in the mind. Also, there is a discussion that think aloud protocols induce additional cognitive load on students, but Erickson and Simon show that if you don't ask students to elaborate on their think alouds, it doesn't induce any extraneous cognitive load on them. Think aloud context is specific, so as we believe SRL as an event, so think aloud protocols are closely linked to events that occur during the learning session. Then think aloud protocols will help us augment the data we are getting from other sources. The challenges are that the command of language, so if English is not someone's first language, then a lot of the processing will be devoted to processing the language than explaining what you're doing. Verbosity, some people talk a lot, some people don't, so the length of the segments that we get, or the length of the think aloud protocols we get from different people are different. The length of the codable units, so how long is a codable unit? Is it a sentence, is it a phrase, or how do we define the boundaries along the lines of a unit? Think alouds are laborious to transcribe, like for a minute it takes like half an hour or something to transcribe, code, recode, tally, everything. Then sustaining loud and clear think aloud protocols is very difficult in long sessions. So for instance, our session was 2 hours, it was very, very difficult and tiring for someone to think aloud loudly and clearly for 2 hours. Yeah?
Are think alouds reliable? Like for example, if I look at this image and you ask me to think what I'm or verbalize what I'm thinking, I may only verbalize some aspects of it, not all of them.
Yeah. So
first of all. Second of all, I may not trust in you, so I may only, the mutual trust thing. Another thing is that I may hide my feelings and not say that it's really boring or whatever, depending on what your characteristic is. There are some challenges.
Yeah. So it gets us one step closer for us to know what the learner thinks. It is not ideal, definitely. I mean, if I ask you to read something and do a quiz, the only thing I know from you is the quiz. But then by thinking a lot, I get one step further closer to what you think. But it's never perfect. People are different. People don't emote aloud as a set of emotions. They don't think aloud what they're thinking. They sometimes just read. You listen to them for 2 hours, they just read. They don't say a word except read. So those are all challenges.
So I would just add to that in Eric and Simon's book, they talk about 2 things that can, again, they address your problem, I think. One is to get the student to practice thinking aloud prior to actually engaging, to get them comfortable with that method. The other thing is that the researcher stays out of their sightline. Because you're right, because if they start thinking about what am I saying and what am I saying to this researcher, that might affect what they say because of social desirability bias. We know that it exists. So staying out of the sightline prevents them from being something that's actively something that the research that's not active in their mind. Because ideally you want to reduce these extraneous processing. You want them to focus on the task and just speaking as honestly as they possibly can. So I think they do give some recommendations to that. But like others are saying, there's still there's problems with the way they move closer, but using these, following their procedure, it gets us closer.
And
Out of sight, out of think aloud.
That's
because they say it gets awkward, like if someone's sitting there looking at you and you're thinking aloud for 2 hours, like they say it's awkward, so they don't say anything extra, they just read, so that's the easiest way to go. But if we are not there, then they will start thinking aloud after some time, so we have to prompt after. They say 10 seconds or how many seconds?
It varies. Like some people
Yeah.
say 3 seconds, some people say 10 seconds.
So we have to prompt them to think aloud, so we should be there. But
And it's just
there's
like,
always like balance trade-offs, so it's the closest.
even the prompts are, they talk about like the types of prompts you can give, like, and they say that the minimalist thing, just keep talking.
Yeah.
Keep
Don't
talking.
say anything.
Don't think anything else, don't like ask them to do anything else, but like a very direct, very short interjection on part of the researcher.
Even in instruction, we don't want them to explain what they're doing, just say what you're thinking. So even the explanation video should be very, very precisely telling them that just say what you're thinking, don't explain. Because if they explain, that induces additional cognitive
Do you
load.
ask them for any practices before they
Yeah.
actually do the thing?
No, we don't show them a video that shows I think aloud, which is on a totally different thing, it's a multiplication thing. You do it 2-digit by 2-digit multiplication, but we don't ask them.
So they see, like they
They
get
see
to,
it.
they see it vicariously done through a video.
Yeah.
And other people have done it with the practice. Like you can either show them how it's done or get them to do it themselves on a related but different task.
This is a sample of Think Aloud protocol that also Eric also shared one last time. The codable units are the ones that have the slashes around them. So the length of those segments is different. And on the right you see all the codes, like from the top, the second one, take notes, summary, knowledge elaboration, feeling of knowing, take notes, take notes. So these are all coded. So for take notes, you see the video and see that they're taking notes, and then you code it as take notes, because we never know from what they're doing, what they're saying that they're taking notes. Log files, these are computer-generated log files from computer-based learning environments. They're minimally intrusive, so you can easily collect tons of data from users' interactions, keystrokes, clicks, scrolls, anything, and they're all time-stamped in milliseconds, so you can easily track them and align them. Challenges, so the validity of inference. If you use only the log files, we're missing a lot of things. We don't know what they were doing, what was the context, what were they reading, what were they saying, so we should definitely align with different types of data. Analysis, there are more advanced analyses that hidden Markov models, educational data mining, machine learning that our computer scientists, Babak and Francois, are more expert on this. These help us do transition mining, data mining, what else? A lot of things. I don't know this jargon. I just put them.
And these are possible.
Yeah, these are possible. Don't ask what they are. Then the eye tracking. The advantages for collecting eye tracking is it provides us on the gaze behavior of participants and what they're reading and what they're attending to. They call it the eye-mind relation. So whatever the eye is attending to, we assume that they're thinking about it or they're attending to it. So it collects gaze patterns, gaze location, fixation duration, diameter of the pupils, and transitions between different parts of the interface. It indicates where the learners are attending to, as I said. It's non-obtrusive because previously the devices were head-mounted or like they didn't have chin rests. But here these are remote eye trackers installed on LCDs, so they're non-intrusive. They give us data at millisecond level, but with having them as remote, we're losing accuracy. So it doesn't give us very, very accurate data on word level, like when they're reading. You can have a general idea where they're reading, but without having them to have their heads fixed, we're losing some things on the accuracy. But for a long session, we have to do this. We can't have them like sitting at somewhere like fixated for 2 hours. The challenges: the devices are expensive, $30,000, $40,000 a device. The data is difficult to analyze. For a 2-hour session, we got something like 400,000 lines of log. Excel even crashes when you want to just run a formula. So we asked Francois, our computer scientist, to write a code in a programming language to be able to parse all those logs. The lighting conditions need to be always constant because a slightest change will affect the diameter of the pupils and all the other factors, because we are getting a concave load from the diameter of the pupil. The inferences need to be made in combination with other data sources. We can't just rely on this. We don't know what they were doing, what interface they were on, so we can use the log file to see where they were on. And use think aloud to see what they were thinking, what they were looking at there. The SRL processes we get from eye tracking are either rereading, so you can read and then go back and reread, so you can easily see them, or cohesive coordination with informational sources, which we define as a transition from text to graph back to text, or from graph to text back to graph. So each one of these triplets are one instance of coordination of information sources. So we can easily get these transitions from the log files. This is a sample log file. On the left, we have timestamps, so it's at the millisecond level. So this device is a 60 Hertz device, collects 60 samples per second. Then the yellow ones are for the left eye, the green ones are for the right eye. We get gaze point in terms of coordinates of x and y where they're looking at, the distance to the monitor, because if it gets too far, then that's invalid data. We usually have the distance of about 60 centimeters. Pupil size, the same thing for the right eye. Fixation duration in milliseconds at each point, plus the AOI, the areas of interest that we define. Like this. So this is text, this is graph. So it calls us text, graph, when you're looking at it. The face video data. So Jason is an expert on this, so I don't want to go into too much detail. I'll just say what it is. So the advantage is that it gives us reliable measures of emotions. Either it's basic or learning-centered emotions. We can make valid inferences out of these face data on learners' emotions, and also we can use different sources of data to make our inferences more reliable. These data can be aligned with other sources, as I said, to make more valid and reliable inferences. The challenges are, as many people can attest to it, difficult to code manually, as because they're doing it in a frame level. And also at the facial expression level, so say that like where the eyebrows are, where the lips are, or how the eyes are. For each frame, they're doing all of these, so it's like very difficult to code. It lacks 100%. There's a lack of 100% reliable automatic affect detection software. There are software out, but they're not, 100% reliable. There are challenges in video quality that we have to change camera, change lighting conditions. Use different places for the camera. If it's at the top, there are biases for, for sadness. If it's on the bottom, it's mostly for surprise, because if you're looking from bottom, then you see like there's a bias for more surprise.
Anger
from the top, yeah.
So just based off the angle of your face, the system will assume that you're showing one emotion or either. Like this would look happy and this would look sad.
Yeah, that's been
but you're typing or when you're taking
that's been largely corrected there from well, at least for the face reader, from 2 to 3. That was a huge problem too. Not so much problem anymore.
So in the next talks, Jason will go into more detail in the engagement theme talks. This is a screenshot of the face reader. I don't know which version, but this is just to give you a general idea.
It's 4.
4. Great. So on the left there's a video, on the right it's the same video, but there's a 3D mesh on the person's face. So it models the person's face for each millisecond or frame level. Gives them what emotions they have at that moment, or the is a probability of emotion at each. It's analyzing for 8 basic emotions, and it gives us the probability of each emotion at each.
It's like a probability. What it's doing is face reader is using a few different algorithms. The first one it's using is to map on and basically identify the different facial features. And the other one, where what the emotions are coming from, is it's most easiest to think of as a good fit index. In the sense of, given the constellation of facial expressions that face reader is recognizing, what is the best fit to the emotional state that face reader's network is recognizing that towards? It's an artificial neural network. That's the type of network it is. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
We can talk more about that.
So then we turn to physiological data. What we are collecting now is galvanic skin response, which is skin's electrodermal activity. Also, it shows us temperature, movement, like in X, Y, and Z directions. It's supposed to show us arousal, activation, anxiety, and it has been used in history for lie detection in the past. And we haven't analyzed this data in detail, but generally it's said that it's showing arousal, activation, anxiety. And then we can use this to couple with face data to give us the intensity of some emotions or valence for some emotions, maybe.
Not valence.
Yeah, intensity.
Arousal.
Advantages: it taps into humans' body's physiological responses, because the human body won't lie. When you're And when you're anxious, the body will react immediately, so you will record immediately with that device. Intense emotions, high and low arousal, cognitive load. It is a physiological measure, but it comes from the eye tracking. It shows the high or low cognitive load when they're doing the task. Challenges, the data is noisy because it needs a lot of signal processing, data cleaning, and a lot of factors can influence these data. I mean, if you're anxious about something else, it will show on the data, but maybe it's not because of the task that you're doing. And it's very difficult to make inferences on its own, so it should be aligned with more and more other sources of data.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I don't understand the pupil diameter, what it has in relation to the galvanic.
No, I just added them as a different physiological measure.
Oh.
It's
Although it's
usually
connected with
correlated.
eye tracking.
It can be correlated with pupil dilation as a
Yeah.
measure of cognitive load. That was the idea, right, Reza?
Yeah. And this is a sample of the GSR data for it's for an hour and a half. And then the top part is a zoomed part for the gray section on the bottom. Each of those spikes are supposed to show arousal or anxiety or activation. But this is a visual representation. We also get a log with detailed millisecond level, all these number values. The bottom part is movement, the middle part is temperature, and the third part is the electrical activity. Okay. So for aligning these data sources, the advantage is that we're getting more triangulating findings from other channels, making more valid and reliable references from all these data channels about SRI processes. The challenge is that devices have different sampling rates, like GSR has 8 sampling per second, iTrack has 60, log files is different, face reading is different. So we have to deal with all these different sampling rates. There are offsets between data sources, so when we turn on the eye tracking, then turn on the system, then get the GSR, and so they should have the same clock. We should know the offsets between them and then apply all these. It is time consuming. I mean, it's a small problem, but it takes time to go to each one of those and then identify those times differences. It is high-end computers and for handling massive data, or computer programming codes for handling these log files. Questions? How many data sources do we need to make valid inferences? Are we collecting too much data? Which one are more important? So maybe for each one of those processes, we can identify one or two data channels that are only important. So we just don't use the other ones to save time. Which ones are more reliable, as I said? Which ones are redundant? What are the signatures of SRI processes? What is the granularity for the inferences that we want to make? How micro level inferences do we want to make, or do we just want to make macro level inferences? This is a pictorial representation of aligning multiple data sources for the same minute that she was like that. The log file showed that, the GSR showed that. This is just a pictorial representation. There's a quick video I can show you that we use a program to align multiple sources of data. It does it in real time. So in the bottom you see eye tracking log, on the left face video, on the right screen recording, on top pupil dilation and fixation duration. So we feed all these logs and videos to it, and then you can play it, and then set the offsets to it for different logs, and then it automatically plays it for us.
Do you have the way of the reliability of each thing? Like, for example, you said that face video, the analysis is more important, or the results are more important, more reliable than another? For example, do you have the
It depends on the type of inference that you want to make. If it's about emotions, then face videos has a lot. Face videos have a lot high priority. If you're making inferences about processing, then pupil dilation, then eye tracking, then screen recording, these are important. So it depends on strictly on what process you want to make inferences about.
This device can allow you to integrate those ways.
Yes. But it's just a visual representation. You want to see what someone was doing when she was like taking notes. Just pull the video back and play it and see what she was doing. It doesn't help a lot in analyzing because we want to deal with numbers with analysis. It's just a visual representation. I just want to show you how it looks like.
I'll be talking a little bit about the analysis of it. Like not of these data, but just generally how you could go about doing it.
And thanks so much, and I'll give the break.
So, where is it here?
Should be. questions?
I have a question. Yes.
So just let it finish, it's like 10 seconds.
If you click on your behind it, then it's fine.
It looks like Joseph and Arthur presenting. The way it was, the way it was heading, like, oh, Joseph and Arthur presenting is the three.
Yeah, you know, it's basically just around that area.
Flying in.
I could go from.
Does it work?
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Okay, so the article I'm reviewing is entitled "A Three-Pronged Method to Study Inference Generation in Literary Text." So what I want to do is show you how the method described here fills a gap in our analytical techniques for making sense and drawing strong conclusions about the data. So I have a pretty quick outline. I just want to describe the three-pronged method in this paper. I mean, it's a 20-year-old paper, so it doesn't talk about like GSR, it doesn't talk about face reader, it doesn't talk about eye tracking, but I think it gives us a flexible framework to think about how to put these stuff together after it's collected. So describe the three-pronged method, and then describe a more research article that used it. I think that's an exemplar of it. So as Reza described, we have potential to collect a great deal of data, but there's problems with such quantities. Maintenance of data integrity, storage capacity, processing capacity, and computational techniques. And once you have all these issues dealt with, you're left with all these data, and then a vague sense of the research questions that drove you to collecting in the first place. For us, those research questions would be something along the lines of like, how do students self-regulate their learning? What strategies and processes do they engage in? And do these result in improved knowledge and understanding? But before to answer those questions, we have to tackle more basic questions like, how do we know which strategies and processes occur? How do we differentiate between them? And how do we know when they occur? And this is where I think the article is useful for that. Specifically, they describe what types of online data are needed and how to structure the analysis to draw interpretations, which we can apply to the study of self-regular learning. Now, that wasn't the original intent of the article, judging by the title, so there's limitations in how we can apply it, but I think there's still transferable ideas that exist nonetheless. For instance, the text processing provides the research context for these authors, and text is a predominant medium for research in our research as well. Second, these authors deal explicitly with the issue of converging multiple streams of data. And last, the method requires creating specific theoretical predictions. It's an issue that we need to deal with ourselves, and where the field is moving currently to address, I think. So the three prongs are applied to online inference generation, as is the phenomenon of interest for the authors, but it's akin to our research in SRL processing. Inference generation just means text comprehension, so it's a very specific instance of an SRL strategy, but I argue that the method can be expanded to include other cognitive, affective, motivational, and metacognitive processing. The authors identify three kinds of inferences, but really the distinction for us of interest is between those that occur invariantly and always automatically, so the automatic processing, and those that don't occur automatically or always, the strategic processing. So the three prongs are verbal reports, behavioral measures, and specific theoretical predictions, and those are depicted here. And I apologize if I'm blurry if I was transferring from my Mac to this PC, so you lose some detail of that. The authors deal with a lot of discourse processing theories, but we don't care about those. What we want to pay attention to is the SRL theory. So any SRL theory that can give us the potential to make specific predictions about the moment-by-moment processing is what we're interested in. So for us, that might be something like Wayne Hadwin's information processing model, SRL. So the authors describe many theories of reading comprehension, just as a way to illuminate how theories can allow you to articulate why particular classes of processes occur, and under which conditions they occur. For you to be able to conclude that these processes occur, you must be able to measure processing under these conditions. So you need theories as a guide, otherwise certain processes will go untested. So once sufficiently precise, detailed, and decisive with your theories guiding you, you can empirically test the occurrence of the process that you're interested in. Verbal reports include asking participants to answer why or how questions while reading or coming up with their own questions, but a method that we prefer is the think aloud protocols, where participants are asked to verbalize their thoughts as they happen. So instead of setting up your study to investigate a predetermined process, like you would just going based off theory, the use of verbal reports allows you may expose relevant processes that you may not anticipate. However, participants can only attend to the information they consciously have in their mind, which limits the types of information you get from different processes. I'm thinking specifically here of affective and motivational processes you may not get from this method. Last behavioral measures include the assessment of post-reading memory, like speed of recognition tests, so like a post-test, measures of reading time, and online latency measures such as the time delay in responding to a keyword that is related to a learning process that supposedly occurred while reading. So for instance, after reading a story about a disorganized room, participants can more quickly respond to the word messy than other words. When behavioral measure is chosen that is appropriate for the phenomenon of interest or anything you want to investigate, it can give an easily measurable insight into that process. But on the other hand, some behavior measures are limited. For instance, while word latency can perhaps give the content of some process, like messy does, it may miss out on the category of process, or it may miss out on nonverbal processing, and again, like affective and motivational. So I'm not saying that they're impossible to collect, but I think it might be more challenging to try to find a word that aligns with motivation. You might see something for boredom or interest or maybe bored. And again, this is the block where a lot of the data, a lot of the channels that Reza went over would fit into. So the GSR would fit under behavioral measure, the eye tracking would fit under behavioral measure. So I'll move briefly to reviewing an educational article that adopted this method, just as a way to give a brief example of its use. The article is written by Kendu and Vandenberg and published in 2005 by the Journal of Educational Psychology. These authors were interested in seeing the effects of misconceptions on students' text processing and their memory for the text, and did so by recording think-aloud particles, reading times, and recall scores, and looked at both the quantities and qualities, or the content of these variables. So firstly, based on their literature review and deductive reasoning, they made specific predictions about what they expect to observe. They write, a second possible scenario is that readers with misconceptions engage in different types of processes and remember less information in the text than do readers without misconceptions. So the reason why this is important because it's showing them that they're making predictions, specific predictions, on both the online processing and the offline measures. Next, the authors write that an important additional expectation is the observed pattern of online processes will be reflected in the pattern of offline results, or the offline memory. So this is showing that they're attempting to converge and integrate these multiple streams of data in their predictions. So in the summarizing this article, guided by their predictions and based off converging think aloud, reading time, and recall data, the authors can make very strong conclusions about their questions of interest. They write, readers with misconceptions proceed through a text at the same speed and with the same types of processes as those readers without misconceptions. But the content of these processes reflect the misconceptions, resulting in fewer valid explanations. So these are occurring while they're reading. They go on, the invalid inferences generated during reading led to generally less consistent and internally coherent representations. From the results of our study, we can conclude that an important part of this interference originates during reading. So that's a very strong conclusion that's bolstered by two studies they did. They did a study with the reading of the think aloud protocols, and they did a study with the behavioral measures, separate samples, but they converged these two types of data together to make this inference. And I think it's a pretty specific conclusion they're drawing, and it's very strong, and it's probably why they got published in JEP. All right. Do you have any questions or comments about this paper or about what Reza went over? Yes.
Is it necessary to have like 60 different instances in 1 second of one behavior?
I think that's important because you have to, well, it depends, I think, on the phenomenon you're interested in. Like, what's the time scale of that? Like, we're getting 60 data points a second. Is that operating on the same time scale as the phenomenon of interest? Well, for reading times, it may be. I mean, it really, if it depends. If you want to look at the passage, like if you want to look at the reading time for a passage, you really just want to look at that AOI and seconds. Really, just want to look to see in seconds. So just 1 second, not 60 times a second. 60 times a second will give us more information on the words, like the letters in these words. Like how long are you spending there on these words? So I mean, it's a tool that can, like for other researchers, they would use it for that purpose. For us, sometimes we just want to see the text. So it is giving us more information than we need because we do the analysis on the seconds. So, okay, it is giving us more than we need. But like I think the idea is to try to balance as best as you can the time scale of the phenomenon of interest you're having. Like another example would be, like I know this is another, like what we look at a lot, but like mood is something that's longer time scale.